It is a brisk, cool morning here in Vancouver, and as a result, the leaf blowers, they are in full force outside. It's why this video is coming a little bit late, because I could not record the audio. There were just too many going on outside my apartment, so I apologize for the late upload for this one. But today we are talking about a guy on the Toronto Maple Leafs that made himself such a bad name. This guy was tarnished. This guy's name was thrown around. Everybody was talking about how this guy was a liability. But guess what? Now he is on the Detroit Red Wings, and for a brief period last week, he was the top NHL player in plus-minus. Now he's no longer there. He's in a really big tie for 10th place in the NHL. But today we are going over to Red Wings defenseman Justin Holl and taking a look at some of the comments he had made regarding his time in Toronto. Justin Holl has just spoken out. Now, when it comes to Holl and his profile here, 31 years old, 6'4", 194 right-handed defenseman, signed till the end of 25-26 at $3.4 million a year. When Steve Yzerman signed this contract, it was seen as a huge mistake because the Red Wings were taking a guy whose reputation in Toronto was just down in the dumps. Sure, he had two 20-point seasons, one of which actually was accomplished in 55 games played, but his last season in Toronto saw him put up 18 points in 80 games played, and we all know the kind of rep that Justin Holl had as a Maple Leaf. This guy made bad decisions, this guy was not fit for the top four, he was kind of forced to play in the top four because the Maple Leafs in their depth, it wasn't really all too great. But Justin Holl got a contract in free agency with Detroit that a lot of people said was a massive overpayment. Steve Yzerman, what the hell are you doing? Steve Yzerman, this is one of the many contracts you have signed that don't make sense. JT Compher, Andrew Kopp, Ben Chiarot, Justin Holl, why are you getting these names? You are losing your touch. You're out of touch. Stevie Y, what's going on here? Well, things are a little bit different now. Because after the start of the season, Justin Holl was placed in a pretty good position. He's got 3 points in 8 games played with the Wings so far. He's honestly looked pretty alright, and as we had said earlier on in the year, he was first in the NHL in plus-minus before Vancouver and Vegas players really started to take over in that respect. Holl is at a +7 right now on the NHL season, which is in a pretty big tie with 10 other players for 10th in the NHL. It's a 10-way tie between Shea Theodore, Amadio, William Karlsson, DeMello, Sean Durzi, Reinhart, Evan Rodriguez, Ridley Gregg, Derek Forbort, and Alexander Barkov, not to mention, of course, Holl is in there too. Or actually, it's an 11-player tie. Yeah, that's it, right? But Holl and his season with the Red Wings has been good. With this in mind, though, we had ourselves an article published on the Hockey News by Nick Barden. Yeah, the guy who made Toronto Marlies videos on YouTube. Nice to see him in a prominent media role. He published this piece regarding some comments made by Justin Holl on his time with the Maple Leafs. I feel like I've seen more coverage on Toronto since I've left. Red Wings Justin Holl looks back on time with the Maple Leafs. This article is going to be linked in the description. Barden does some pretty good work, just kind of summarizing everything and going over the quotes, but we are using this article because of the quotes themselves. Now, the context behind this is on Friday, Justin Holl joined Ray Ferraro and Darren Dreger on the Ray and Dregs podcast to discuss his move to Motor City and what it's like to sign a contract in free agency. Also, they talked about what his time was about in Toronto. Here are the comments made by Justin Holl. I loved my time in Toronto, the 31-year-old said. I really have nothing but great memories, and I'm grateful for the relationships that I was able to forge and the team success that we had. Team success, eh? I mean, making the second round once is pretty interesting team success, but still, you get what he means. The Maple Leafs were a pretty accomplished regular season team with Justin Holl in the lineup. I have no qualms about moving on, though, but I was really grateful for my time in Toronto. That being said, this was just what was next in my path to development, I think, and how the contract situation works out and everything like that. I'm grateful to be in a place where I'm valued and I'm just ready to keep moving. Now that's a great comment. I like how he says he's in a place now where he is valued, because that's really the case here with Detroit. They've been loving this guy for a good period after he started racking up those pluses on the plus-minus sheet. Sure, when he was initially signed, many people were not loving this contract and this player. Stevie Y, has he really lost it? Why is he signing Justin Hall to a decent to medium-sized termed deal with a $3-point-something million amount? That is pretty nuts. Stevie Y, what's going on? And now, I'd say more people have warmed up to the idea, so it's good for Justin Hall to acknowledge that he is valued here. But it is interesting because I guess sort of the underlying implication in a comment like this is that he wasn't really valued in Toronto. He's not really saying that, but that's kind of a piece of information I feel might be present in the subtext of this comment, and that's something that I won't necessarily disagree with, because if you take a look at all the comments made about Justin Hall over the past few years as a Toronto Maple Leaf, things would get pretty ugly at times, and I don't know, Toronto Maple Leafs fans, y'all know this guy, y'all know your fan base more than I do, so if you wanted to correct me in the comment section, what were your overarching general thoughts about Justin Hall as a defenseman on your team? Was he this anchor of a player that would bring your team down, make bad decisions? Was he an okay guy that was just overplayed? I'd seen that argument make itself known a few times, that if Justin Hall just wasn't being played like a top 3 defenseman on the team, then he probably would have been a lot better, but hey, that's a question for y'all to go out there in the comments and write about. But either way, moving back over onto the comments here, he is valued here, he's ready to keep on moving. As players, I don't know if we have time to worry about stuff like the media and the coverage. We have such a narrow focus. I'm just trying to make sure my knee feels good for Monday's game, or something like that. There also was a conversation about the Toronto Maple Leafs themselves. It is kind of funny. Having left Toronto, I think I have a greater appreciation for just how much coverage there is. I feel like I've seen more coverage on Toronto since I've left than I ever did when I was there, so it's kind of funny. And that's really interesting too. Maybe moving to Detroit makes it so that he sees a lot more Leafs coverage. But, of course, when he is in Toronto, you could understand if players just straight up deny that it's going on there. Like, he says that he has seen more Toronto coverage outside of Toronto, maybe because in Toronto you were conditioned to not really focus on it because there was just so much gosh darn coverage, micro-analyzing every small detail, micro-analyzing everything that goes on in practice, every comment that a player makes to the media, etc., etc. So maybe because he's not in that environment anymore, it's easier to open up and acknowledge its existence. There also was a conversation here about Hall's start to his NHL career, how in his first 2 games he had 2 goals and was a +5. I honestly, for a period of time, thought there was a chance that I would never not score in an NHL game, but obviously it turned out to be a little harder than that. It didn't end up being true, but it was funny. I was at the AHL All-Star game a couple of days before that, and then I got called up, and even at the All-Star game, I won every skills competition. Our team won the All-Star game. It was just one of those weeks where everything was just falling your way. The conversations in the article then conclude about Justin Hall's underdog story of being eventually called up and becoming an NHL player, which is some good heartwarming stuff, but I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this article and see that yourself. But at the end of the day, Justin Hall has some really interesting things to say about Toronto, how he was a player that appreciated his time there, how there was a lot of media coverage, but how, oddly enough, he seems to be exposed to it more so than ever before. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Justin Hall's comments regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs and his departure from that team? If you're a Red Wings fan, how are your thoughts on the way Hall has played in this season so far? Are you impressed? What has been the most surprising thing about the way Hall has performed this season? I saw a lot of people memeing around when Hall was first in the NHL in plus-minus. Oh, this is a mistake by Kyle Dubas to not bring this guy in. Or, oh, it's a mistake by Brad Treliving to not bring him back. Stuff like that, people joking around about the irony of one of the worst defensive contracts that was signed, reputation-wise at least, during the offseason, being good. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Justin Hall, his transformation, how he's been playing in Detroit versus Toronto. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.